All right, everyone. Trump has tweeted out another little edited video piece with the hashtag #FraudNewsCNN, and it's causing heads to spin. Now, the legacy media, their heads have been spinning like The Exorcist now for months anyway. But this time, they're really going to lose it this time because Trump tweets out a little edited video clip. It originates from Reddit, although it may have been edited and placed there by somebody who already had it somewhere else, of Trump during his wrestling days, jumping on someone, pretending to beat him. And it's got a big CNN logo over the face of the person that he's pretending to beat in this video. And he's obviously having fun doing this. He's baiting you. And when the people at CNN or the New York Times or whatever, they are fake news, it's propaganda, it's an arm of the establishment, it's pro-war, it's pro-corporate welfare because they're corporations, pro-globalism because they're owned by multinationals. When these very pro-war, corrupt idiots respond, they're going to call him unpresidential. Oh, this isn't the way a president is supposed to act. He's always supposed to be boring and somber. Trump's fans did not elect somebody to be boring and somber and to pretend to care about issues with a very stony face, sitting there, very astute, very presidential, pretending to care while their actions say something totally different. No, they elected somebody to be bombastic, to insult our enemies, to insult the enemies of the people of the United States, which in the past didn't include the cable media or newsprint. In the past, they tried to hold corrupt politicians accountable. Now it's one-sided. They hold some of them accountable some of the time, exonerate the rest, and usually exonerate them all. So I don't care if he insults the legacy media. I don't care if he insults Joe and Mika. I don't care if he insults CNN. I don't care if he insults the New York Times. I don't care. You are corporate entities. Your businesses. Obama comes out when he's president and insults people who work in the fossil fuel industry. He insults people in certain automotive firms. He insults people who work for certain banks. He certainly insults the entire white working class in the country, which is why the Rust Belt looked like it did during the last election. Nobody said a damn thing because he did it with a somber look on his face and with his typical sneer, with a little bit of slyness, a little off-the-cuff remark couched in fancy language. Trump doesn't do that. He comes out and says, "You're a fraud. You're an idiot. This asshole over here is slandering me," and posts memes on Twitter. Who cares? Is it endangering national security? No, not doing anything like that. Did it raise my taxes? Did it cause 1,000 Americans to die? No, then I don't care. I don't care how many memes he tweets out. I find it funny. It's entertaining. Donald Trump is of sound mind. You may not think that because you look at stuff like this, compare it to very somber and dry and boring Obama. By the way, Bush was basically the same. And you say, well, he must be insane because he's memeing on the internet. It's not insane. It's how he won the last election. He won the last election by going over the heads of the inefficient corporations that have strangulated cable and newsprint largely, ignoring them completely and attacking them at least occasionally, and going right to social media. This is the new era of U.S. politics. Politicians that are willing to put themselves out there less filtered or unfiltered on the internet and take their argument directly to the people so that the alternative social media era can analyze things without having the lamestream media to have to do it through. Those politicians will tend to succeed more than their compatriots that are more reserved, that want to go on CNN and give an interview, that want to go on some radio show. No, you need podcasts, not radio shows. You need Sirius and you need podcasts. You don't need terrestrial radio. You need video feeds that are being hosted on YouTube or something like that. You don't need cable TV. You don't need it. It's not necessary. You need some small town magazine run by the same kids who make a lemonade stand. You want their endorsement, not the endorsement of the New York Times. Hillary Clinton got every endorsement she possibly could from the entire corporate media complex, and even from Republicans within the political establishment, and she still lost. Is this not evidence that we're undergoing a major social change within the United States? It doesn't take a genius to see. I don't care if he tweets stuff that you find objectionable or off the wall or evidence of lunacy. Lunatics typically don't make hundreds of millions of dollars flipping skyscrapers and charging rent in China. They just don't. You might think he's immoral, you might think he's dubious, but he's certainly not dumb and he's certainly not insane. People saying this, they don't know anything about Trump. They look at stuff from post-primaries and how he acts then. They're not willing to go back and look at what he said consistently through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. What he said, how he acted, the views that he had, who he funded. He's a centrist, a mild reformer who's trying to take back control of the GOP away from the worst elements of the neocons, so that the more sane neocons can get together with the paleoconservatives and people like Rand who lean towards libertarianism and the populists so that they can form a party platform that works for the modern age. The Democrats haven't. The Democrats are locked in the 90s, which means they want to be moralist. They're pro-war. They're pro-censorship. They're pro-big government in every way. Trump muzzles the EPA. Who cares? When's the last time the EPA actually cleaned up a Superfund site? Look at the Animas River when it poisoned that with the old King gold mine. Oh, whoops! One of our interns just unplugged the mine. A whole shit ton of arsenic and other heavy metals just drifted downstream. Now tens of thousands of Native Americans need us to ship them water. Okay, we shipped it to them in old oil tankers that still had residue in them. Aren't we just so fucking lovely? Who cares? As long as Trump's not starting a nuclear war or raising somebody's taxes, you'll find the number of little people in this country who actually care about this is fairly limited. You see, the people that really don't like Trump don't really use social media. They tend to be like, they're over 80 or something. That's the Democratic party of today. People who are over 80 who watch CNN in a nursing home. That's the Democratic Party. Kind of like it was back in the days of the Old South, the Civil War or something. Some old plantation dude with a white beard taking up his saber to preserve states' rights, just as some states are doing right now on the sanctuary city issue. Now, things have gone all topsy-turvy right now. I don't care if Trump tweets out a funny video. How is it unpresidential? What? He's not allowed to make humor? That's funny. You thought every time Obama opened his mouth, all Obama ever had to do to get the legacy media to proclaim him the funniest fucking man who ever walked the earth was grin. Meanwhile, he's killing tens of thousands of people. He's screwing with the economy. He's tarnishing our image abroad in an active sense. Nobody says a damn thing about it. And all he had to do was sit there and give his little grin. They thought it was hilarious. Trump puts stuff out there that's actually funny. They're not grinning. They're not laughing. They think that it's terrible. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's hilarious. CNN, yeah, they're fake news. They are a fraud. Look at the footage we've got of their own pundits, their own editors. Look at what's happening at the New York Times. Do you trust these people? There was a time many decades ago, back before the era of social media, when there were some good outlets on cable. There were some good newsprint outlets. They tried to keep all politicians accountable. They didn't have as much of a partisan axe to grind. You know what they proved, though, in this last election? When everybody and their mother jumped aboard the Shill for Hill campaign bus, they proved they became partisan. They're no longer objective news. They even disclaimed the very concept after the election. When Trump was elected, they said, should we give fair coverage to Trump? No, because we presume him to be nuts. We presume him to be a fascist. We presume him to be a bigot, because he obviously is. Let alone the fact that for decades, you all wanted him to come aboard your shows and give interviews on everything under the sun. You asked him about foreign policy questions through the 90s and through the 2000s, back into the 80s. He was getting called before Congress to give testimony on commercial issues. He was being called before the media on a weekly basis to talk about North Korea, Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, what do you think we should do about Iraq? Mr. Trump, what are your thoughts on Afghanistan? Over and over and over, they treated him like the biggest expert in the world on every fucking topic. Then he actually runs, all of a sudden they hate him. All of a sudden they hate him. You know why? Because Hillary had already bought large segments of the corporate media. That's all it's about. If Trump had reached out... See, here's the problem. The way a Clinton campaign is run, You get money from foreign states, you get money from banks, you get money from super PACs, you roll it into slush funds until you can't tell $1 from the other, and then you start absorbing it. It allows you to use those same murky funds that you yourself are directly coordinating with to control the media, because you can give them kickbacks. Oh yeah, we'll donate $10 million to this charity that your wife runs. Oh yeah, we'll make sure that somebody invests so you can get new desks in your studio, ergonomic design, only $10,000 a piece. Yeah, we'll treat your editors really nice. Trump couldn't do that. He's self-funded. He didn't use the slush funds. He actually ran a clean campaign, and now he's paying the price for doing so. The price is the legacy media fucking hates him. Not because of his policies, not because of his attitude. If he had given them as much money as Hillary Clinton provably did through her slush funds that were still in place from the days of Bubba Bill, oh, they'd be fawning over him. Oh, Mr. Trump, we think the solar wall's such a great idea for green energy. Mr. Trump, oh, we think it's wonderful that you're taking up a hard line on North Korea. What a wonderful American you are. How patriotic you are. Oh, Mr. Trump, you're showing restraint in Syria while putting a red line in place and telling Assad he can screw himself. What a swell guy. They would love him. They would love him if he just played their game. But he's not playing their game. Why do you think there are people in the Republic like the Herbert Walkers and the Jebs refuse to endorse? Or they very visibly say nice things about Hillary Clinton during the campaign? It's because it's follow the money. Trump told you to do that months ago. That's all you have to do. All this money gets put into one giant global slush fund and then drained selectively for various purposes so that the same entrenched bullshit artists can keep controlling things. You find it odd that the same Republicans and Democrats keep starting wars. They're all in fundamental agreement on political issues. Do you find that a coincidence? I don't. I think it's quite willful. I think there's a reason for that. It has to do with money and the oil trade and blood diamonds and all these other things that these people make money off of. So when I find out Hillary Clinton was getting millions of dollars from some West African regime that uses slave labor, I think, wasn't it Morocco? If I remember correctly? Like some Moroccan dictator or some Moroccan tribal warlord was giving her millions of dollars after Chelsea and Bubba went over. She's like, in the released email, they said, well, Miss Clinton can't do that. She's already, I think she was meeting with someone in East Asia at the time. But we'll send Bubba and Chelsea over and maybe some other people. And so even Stevens, it was accepted. So all of a sudden, several $1 million enters the Clintons' so-called charity, the one that doesn't apparently do any charitable work. It's like when the Saudi Arabians are funding a sub-charity that has to do with AIDS research and vaccination and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sure they care a lot about treating those poor homosexuals with AIDS. You know, the same people who would be thrown off a building according to their own legal system, or shot or beheaded. I'm sure they cared. That's exactly where the money went. Okay. Now, as far as this goes, who cares if Trump tweets out a funny video? I'm not going to care. When he goes after Mika and Joe. Yeah, here, also, one of my predictions took less than 48 hours to come true. You saw in Being Liberal, if you pay attention to them. I know most of you probably don't, but you got to know your enemy. Being Liberal puts out a story, a hit piece, actually, on Joe and Mika. Now, this is a left-wing group attacking another segment of the left-wing media. Now, why do you think they did that? It's because, they helped to spawn Trump by softballing him. You know why they softballed him? Controlled by the Clintons. Pied Piper candidate. Says it right in the releases from the DNC itself. Oh yeah, we're going to prop up Trump and Ben Carson and Ted Cruz because they're not viable. They can't win. But we want them to siphon support away from whoever ends up being the Republican nominee because then they'll be like a Ross Perot. It'll make it easier for Clinton to win. Only it didn't happen that way. They got hoodwinked by somebody who's been entrenched with the political structure for decades now, who knows the ins and outs. He knows how they work. He knows where their money goes. He's been part of all this bullshit, and that's why he was able to fool you. And you can't wrap your heads around the fact that you can't control him because he's already so rich he doesn't care. He doesn't friggin' care. Go shove your money up your ass. It's not going to get you anywhere. He's got all the money in the world. He doesn't care if you donate $1 million to him. He's not going to give you the time of day. This sort of behavior, when I see Trump do this and then I see the reaction, it actually makes me more likely to continue being at least passively in support of him. It actually does. Saying this as someone who was never a core Trump fan. I say that because I can't have any respect for the same corporate outlets that sold us Iraq, they sold us Afghanistan, they sold us oust Gaddafi, Libya will be fine. Syria. Oh, we need more regulations because reasons. First Amendment, fuck that shit unless it has to do with the corporate press. Protesters, oh yeah, we should do something about that. 10th Amendment, who needs it? These are the people helping to denigrate the Constitution, to screw up our economy and lead us further into globalism. So no, I mean, if that's his enemies, that's a pretty good enemy to have. More respect to him. I hope he tweets out more weird stuff like this. It'll be funny. It's funny. It's humor. It's entertainment. It's satire of a dying news organization that can't wrap its head around reality as it really is. It doesn't understand social media. New York Times is firing half of its copy editors. CNN has constant problems. NBC airs what was supposedly a series of really, really good interviews with Megyn Kelly, the hard hitter from Fox that just totally flop. Get beaten out by 60 Minutes in the same slot. These people are lunatics. If anyone's dumb or crazy, it's not Donald Trump. It's the people running these companies. That's about all. Peace out.